I actually met Quadeca. He was on New York for a tour. I couldn't get tickets to his concert, but I happened to be like near his venue and then he was there. There were other fans obviously, but it was a lot of fun seeing him. I told him about like how appreciative I was of his music. The Folktale project. I was actually born in India and that's always been a big part of my identity. I started music production when I lived in New York and I was in a sense limited to like what I heard culturally. Like a lot of the music was coming from like the same type of sound. And I think I wanted to create music that reflected me. I think if you end up putting out stuff that is authentic or genuine to you, that you will get the praise you deserve.
Hey, if you're like me and you're interested in the YouTube or creator space, you should check out The Published Press. The Published Press is a completely free newsletter founded by YouTubers Colin and Samir. They host their own podcast talking to some of YouTube's largest creators. They've edited some of the best content I've seen on YouTube, and now they're sharing their knowledge about the YouTube space with you for free. The Published Press comes out 3 times a week, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, with everything going on with your favorite creators and platforms. And like I said, it's completely free. Just enter your email address to receive the Published Press whenever it comes out, and that's it. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below, sign up to the Published Press, and get all the info you need on the industry.
He's a young music producer from New York, making whatever music interests him, from electronic to jazz. Please welcome Arjun Kalbag to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Not too bad. How are you?
I'm
Thank you for
good.
having
I'm
me.
good. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I'm excited to, talk to you, get to hear about your music, and what inspires you, things like that.
Of course.
First question that I usually just ask people that come on, what was your first experience with music like, or what made you like want to get into music?
I grew up like from a very, very young age playing classical piano. Um, I think my first, like many other producers, like first experience was like that original garage band on an iPad. But and my story is not necessarily any different. Uh I obviously played piano for a while, but I wanted to see like what like my piano would sound like digitally. So I tried something like the garage band on the iPad, like making one of the songs I was playing on piano, but like just remaking it on um iPad, just with the simple MIDI. And then I really enjoyed that, and one thing led to another where I maybe added percussion over that classical track. And that was my first beat.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. And so is there any like person, whether it's a family member or like just another music producer you look up to that like inspired you the most to like get into music?
Good question. Yeah. So there is this YouTuber I used to watch called Quadeca. He's pretty small. Um, but he started by making like FIFA content on YouTube, and then he started making music. And I really liked his music growing up. And then I learned he did his like own percussion or his own production. So I watched a little bit of his like producer videos. And I really, really liked his sound because he like what I try aspire to do is like he like made music in like a wide variety of genres, and him himself as an artist wasn't limited. Um, so he's probably my biggest inspiration in general.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. I'm a big fan of it as well. Like I found out about him during like voice memos and that whole
Yeah,
era, and
yeah,
now like I listen to his new stuff and it's completely different, but I still
exactly.
get into it.
I actually met Quadeca a while
Really?
ago, but I'm a
Oh,
big
that's
fan.
awesome. What was that like?
It was a lot of fun. I'm based in New York. Um, and he was on New York for a tour. Um, and I actually like I couldn't get tickets to his concert, but I happened to be like near his venue-ish like when he was performing, and then he was there. There were other fans obviously, but it was a lot of fun seeing him. I told him about like how appreciative I was of his music. Very limited interaction, but I'm still
Yeah, but
grateful.
it's still awesome that like you get to meet someone that you look up to like that.
Yeah.
And now you have I think two separate projects, but they're both under the name of Folktales, and they seem to be like based on like famous stories. What was the motivation behind that, or like what made you want to create these projects?
Yeah. So it's actually three, but because
Okay.
so one of them, so I have three projects put out. One of them is it's a short EP based off this play I read for. It was a school project, so I'm kind of disregarding that one. But the folktale project. So uh It's a good question. So I'm Indian. I grew up in I was actually born in India. And that's always been a big part of my identity. Um, and I think like living in like I started music production when I lived in New York, and like I was maybe in a sense limited to like what I heard culturally. Like a lot of the music was like coming from like the same type of sound, like whether it ranged in genre, but the same type of sound. Um, and I think I wanted to create music that reflected like me. So I started with this one folk tale that my mother used to read to me as a child, which I really liked. Um, and I tried to recreate that in music. Um, so that was a lot of fun. I remember like being overjoyed when I finished like mastering that project, and it kind of spread from there. Um, I decided that it would be like interesting to say the least, to try and maybe do that for more folk tales, especially from around the world. So maybe hearing sounds or instruments that you wouldn't necessarily hear in a lot of like Western music. Uh, so it started like that, and then I kind of just enjoyed it so much that I made a very short EP, Folktales One, with 3 songs, and I was like, okay, I can keep doing this. So 3 more came along, and then here we go.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. And do you think that's something you're gonna like keep up and keep on doing, or do you want to move on to different
I
kinds of
think
music?
now that I've released 2 like shorter projects, like I've kind of exhausted like that capability for folktales. So it is definitely something I would consider returning to. I definitely want to take a break now. Uh, I know. So long story short, the my school has a performance, a dance performance, and I'm doing like the music production for some of the pieces.
That's
And
awesome.
the yeah, and the theme of the performance is folktales, coincidentally, like very coincidentally. So I think if any of the choreographers for the dance performance reach out to me with any folktales they want me to create, I would be more than willing to. So hopefully that opportunity comes, I think sometime around June,
Yeah,
April.
yeah, awesome. And I mean, we talked about it earlier, like you are just making whatever's interesting to you at that moment, and you don't really try to focus on just any one genre. And folk tales, like even like
Yeah.
honestly for me, like it was very different from anything that I had heard before. I really liked the idea of like taking these like folk tales or stories and like putting them to music, but it's obviously very different from like whatever the most popular song probably is right now. And so what do you think about like music today with a lot of people just going for a popular or like mainstream sound rather than just truly making whatever they want?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think so, like I said this, but I just listen to so much music, and like oftentimes I'm left disappointed just by like I don't want to say repetitive because there's a lot of talent out there, but like sometimes how limited the sounds are. Um, and then that being said, I do definitely applaud like mainstream artists who will venture to something new or venture to something that is not necessarily like heard before, a new sound. Like I think the best example was Travis Scott, who I think like pre his latest album Utopia maybe had like a little bit repetitive sound with all like the features he was putting out, but then this album came out with like something completely new that we haven't heard from him, which sounded like very authentic to I think listeners, and it was like highly acclaimed. So I think in the end, just if you end up putting out stuff that is authentic or genuine to you, that you will get the praise you deserve, which is what I'm trying to do.
That's awesome. And so when you're trying to come up, whether it's folktales or others, when you're trying to come up with a new song, what does that usually look like for you? You mentioned starting on the piano earlier. Do
Yeah.
you still do that, or do you like focus more on the production first?
Good question. So, actually, let me just grab this. I have my mini piano. This is not the piano I grew up playing, but this is where I start most of my songs with. This handy dandy, what's it called? The Novation Launch Key Mini. Uh, but like I use FL Studio, so most of the time it's me opening up a new FL Studio project and saying like, oh, what do I want to make today? It is actually very rare that I come in like with an idea in mind. More often than not, I'm coming in with maybe like like a note or like a tune possibly, but then I try and go with the flow, as some would say, and just see where it takes me. With the Folktales project, where it is based on something more conceptual, maybe I will come in with like that idea. Um, but um, for like the music I make for fun, which like a lot of times it's not often ones that I'm planning on releasing. I just have fun, and I know that's maybe a bland answer, but I just see where the music takes me.
No, that's awesome. And I think it's definitely important to have some songs that you make just like to make or just to have
Yeah.
to yourself. Like you don't have to be putting out literally everything you create. And do you find that you like take inspiration from other artists as well, or do you try to like keep your own unique sound?
I would like say I try to keep my unique sound, but like it's unavoidable that I like there's so many talented like producers and artists out there that I have to maybe even like subconsciously take inspiration. Um, so I know like I will mimic some of like the mastering styles I'll see like other artists use, and like I know it's not necessarily like me being authentic, but like there are, like I said, talented producers who like clearly are doing something right. Um, so
Yeah,
I
and it's
I'm like not necessarily mimicking them, but I'm trying to make my music better, which so happens to be by incorporating some of their styles. Um, and like I'm not saying what I do is like unique or like far. Like, I'm saying it's far from it. Like there's other people who've done the same, but like the story I'm trying to tell or some of the like the concepts I'm trying to talk about are unique to me, which in the end I think what makes my own music special, at least to like me listening. Um, but I think like what music in general is supposed to evoke something different from everybody. Um,
yeah,
so it
and
is obviously what the producer and the listener gets out of it. I don't mean to interrupt.
yeah, and like inspiration is definitely okay. We see it all over, like
Yeah.
even like chart topping artists talk about like looking up to other bands or artists or like having inspiration. And so it's great that you are aware of like trying to keep your own sound and not just like copy and paste whatever they're doing. And so I guess like what sort of level do you want to reach or what aspirations do you have for your music going forward?
Good question. So other than music production, I'm very interested in engineering, and computer science for that matter. Uh, and I think professionally, I definitely know I want to do something that intersects the two, whether it be music and engineering and music and computer science. And I think like music production has been a good outlet for that because in a sense it does combine the two. Um, but I think like obviously I want to go so far as music production takes me, but I think also that like I want some sort of end product as maybe an engineer, um, maybe a device that can play music. I really don't know just as yet, but I do have a lot of these different interests that I hope can have some sort of intersectionality. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
hopefully.
I think that'd be awesome, like taking your passion for music and putting it into other fields like engineering. I feel like that could be really cool, and especially if like not only are you like making music that's unique to you and that no one else has, but like you said, like some speaker playing device,
Yeah.
like if you make an original model of that, that's just a whole nother level of it. And so production wise, or just like, however it comes about, if you could make a song with any artist in the world, who would you want to collaborate with?
Oh, good question. Um, yeah. I think out of anyone, I talked to about him a little bit, but I think it would have to be Travis Scott. I know that's like a very like he's obviously one of the biggest artists or hip hop artists in the world. But like with his latest release, I really appreciate his sound. Um, I think that he like found a way to mix culture, and like energy into his tracks, and I think like I'm very appreciative of that, or like almost in awe when I listen to his music. Um, so I think maybe finding a way to take his production style and fuse it with my own could be really cool.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that would be a great collaboration just from like what I've heard from you so far. I feel like it would really be a new sound that not many people have heard before. And whether it is, Quadeca or Travis Scott, who we've already talked about, I see a couple music posters in the back of iconic albums. Who are
Yeah.
your like three favorite bands or artists, would you say?
Okay, so that's in the corner. It's Kanye West, MF Doom, and Tyler the Creator, all who I like, but I think um those are more like the visual aesthetic that I also appreciated. Um, but my top artists right now would probably be, I think Quadeca is definitely at the top of my list. Um, I listen to him a lot. I know Spotify Rap just came up, so everyone's been like, we really see who people's true top five is.
Yeah.
But I also like a lot more like low key sounds. Like I like Mac DeMarco, who's I don't know how big he is, but he's an indie artist. And then also I do also appreciate like sometimes that more energetic hip hop sound. Like one of my top artists this year was Playboy Cardi and this artist named Yeet. Uh, but that being said, like I also had jazz in my top five. Uh, so I think if I had to name three right now, I would say Quadeca, Mac DeMarco, and Travis Scott.
All right. Pretty good three. That's a great three. And there's obviously more. It's not like a
Yeah.
set list. I mean, you mentioned a few of them, like there are other artists you're a big fan of. Um, like going back to your music, looking at what you've released, or maybe something that you haven't released, is there a song that you've produced that you think is your favorite so far?
Yeah. So okay. I think uh so you can actually find it on my SoundCloud, but I have a track called Fusion. It's an electronic song, but I think it's pretty cool. It's only 3 or 4 minutes or so, but I tried to take five different genres and smush them into one song, just using the same melody and same chord progression, and I think it worked out really well in the end. So I took um like R&B, I took breakcore, I took hip hop, and I took uh drum D&B, and like I fused them into one song, and it came out pretty cool. So that would probably say it's the release I'm most proud of. Um so yeah.
Awesome. And then if there is anything you have in mind or that you want to bring up, is there anything like coming up that you're looking forward to putting out?
Good question. I actually haven't started doing this yet, but like other than engineering and music, I'm like I wouldn't call myself an artist, but like I do like do some art related things. Like so right now I'm designing a fashion project with a bunch of different pieces that I like of my own designs. So what I'm hoping to do is create original tracks maybe that correlate or represent each of like these art fashion pieces. Um and again, like I talk about intersectionality, but hopefully finding a way to like somehow properly represent like art within music. Not that music isn't art, but finding like that connection I think could be really cool. So I'm hoping to make something like that in the coming months.
That's awesome. And it's really cool. I mean, I feel like each question there's like another layer that you add to it, like you're doing art that's
Yeah.
it's really cool. And so I think that's a great idea to find like ways to even tie in like the different creative things that you're
Yeah.
doing yourself. So for this next thing, just sort of to wrap it up, end things off, I have a section where it's called Know Your Stuff. I just play a few quick clips of your own
Okay.
music and see if you know what it is
Oh,
or see if you can get it. All right.
okay. So I think this is called dopamine, if I'm not
Yep.
mistaken. Yeah.
Yep.
That was a fun one. That was part of the project I made for school where I had to produce a little EP based off a play we read. So
All right. I got one more here.
yeah, I think this is Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Yep. Yep. You got it.
That was a fun one to make too. Um, so yeah, I mean, obviously those two sounds sounded very different, but again, like that's me trying to tell a bunch of different stories within my music.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. And then just one last one that I got for you here.
So that was the first track of the Folktales that I made, and that's called The Tale of Three Kings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
All
that
right.
was fun.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you so much for coming on, letting us know a bit about, your music, the stories behind it, things like that. Is there Anything you want to like shout out or promote for people to go check out?
Well, obviously my SoundCloud is just Arjun Kalbag, but I think I just want to like wrap it up by saying, like, as a musician, I definitely try not be limited. So if anyone like says, "Oh, don't make this or don't make that," don't listen to them. Just make what you want. Is a motto I live by. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Well, keep that in mind if you heard that, and go check out Arjun Kalbag on SoundCloud. I'll leave a link down below. And thank you again for coming on.
Of course. Thank you so much.